As if gamma accidents, radioactive bug bites, and assorted mutants weren't enough.
Welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness just introduced Professor X into the MCU.
We should tell him the truth.
It's Patrick Stewart, all right, though it's unclear if this is the same Xavier from Fox's X-Men movies or a completely new variant.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
So, does this mean that the X-Men will be introduced in the MCU through the multiverse? Are the Fox movies going to be part of the MCU's canon, or is it going to be just another soft reboot? Well, I mean, look, if Hugh Jackman's back as Wolverine, I'm game. But that being said, I gotta be honest, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of mutants being introduced in this way. There's nothing wrong with it, I mean, it sure makes sense, but as cool as it sounds on paper, I have some doubts about it. I think that Xavier and Doctor Strange 2 will only be a cameo, and that mutants already exist in the MCU. We just haven't met any of them yet. I know what you're thinking, but trust me, I got a theory. But if the X-Men are sharing the same universe with the Avengers, then where are they? I mean, it's like Marvel can just say the mutants have always been around, like they were just hiding in that bush over there, right? Well, maybe that's exactly how it's going to happen.
What?
Marvel Studios have proven that the simplest solution is almost always the best, meaning that there's no need for an elaborate explanation on where the mutants have been all these years. Instead, keep it simple and focus on what matters, the characters.
It's right, dude. The beauty of this is its simplicity. Once a plan gets too complex, everything can go wrong.
Yeah, this might sound like a huge cop-out, but the thing people always want to see is the X-Men interacting with other heroes. We want the team-ups and crossovers. We want to see Wolverine fight Hulk and Avengers vs. X-Men. So let's talk about how the X-Men will join the MCU, and more importantly, how their stories should be implemented.
The X-Men have one of the greatest ensemble casts of all time, right up there with one of my favorite shows, The Walking Dead. And speaking of The Walking Dead, this video is sponsored by Walking Dead No Man's Land. No Man's Land is a turn-based mobile RPG survival game. I get to control a team of 3 survivors who are all characters from the series, complete missions, and best of all, take down walkers. Now, I don't normally get into these kind of games, but No Man's Land is different. It connects me to a show that I love with these story-based missions. And you have to really think through every move. You don't always want to fight. Sometimes running is your best option. I try not to end up like so much Otis. But what's really cool is how the game ties into the show that's airing right now. The day after each episode, they release new playable content, such as characters, weapons, missions, and events, all tied directly to the events of the ongoing TV season. It's like experiencing the show on a whole new level. You can also team up with the whole No Man's Land community and take down walkers as part of guild challenges. So the game is available on iOS and Android, and it's free to download. You can click our link in the description or the QR code here on screen. If you use the code SCREENCRUSH, all caps, you get 40 Daryl tokens and his crossbow for free. Back to X-Men.
Enough yapping. Let's do this.
Here's the thing about the MCU. There are certain things that Marvel Studios doesn't bother explaining because there's no need to. For example, the 10 rings. We know they're ancient, very powerful, and that Wenwu used them for hundreds of years. But we don't know where the rings came from. Marvel didn't bother to go into it, probably because that part wasn't important for Shang-Chi's story. Exposition is usually pretty boring.
This is Katana. She's got my back.
1 hour later.
She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn.
5 hours later.
Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
And non-comic fans, who comprise the majority of the audience, don't really care about stuff like the origins of the 10 rings. If it's not important to the hero's journey, then why should the audience even think about it?
Just give me the facts.
Just the facts. Only the facts.
Breathe. Focus. Keep it simple.
No doubt, no doubt.
The simplest explanation is that mutants have always been around. Now this will surely create questions like, where were the mutants all this time? Why no one mentioned them till now? Why didn't they fight Thanos?
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
We shouldn't overthink these things too much. It's like when Marvel introduced the Masters of the Mystic Arts in Doctor Strange. No one batted an eye about the reveal that there are suddenly thousands of sorcerers in the MCU. Same with the Eternals, Spider-Man, Wakanda, Captain Marvel, Black Widow's family, and everything else that expanded the scope of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think that's what's going to happen with the X-Men. In the end, what matters the most is the characters and the story, and the X-Men have some of the best characters and stories ever created in comics.
You read these in your spare time? Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Now to clarify, I do think that Marvel should give us some explanation on mutants and their sudden reveal, but it should be something simple, nothing too elaborate like reality warping events or the multiverse. I don't hate the idea of mutants coming from another universe. In fact, with Multiverse of Madness, that actually makes sense, especially if the multiverses are headed into a collision. But it's also too convoluted and gimmicky, since the X-Men story would become too tied into the multiverse stuff instead of being unique on its own.
I'm Dr. Stephen Strange. I need you to come with me.
Go f yourself, pretty boy.
Also, the mutants should share the same history with the rest of the heroes, because it will lead to better and more interesting stories in the long run. And yes, I'm aware of the theory that the snap or the blip created the mutants, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, I don't want to counter everything I said with a theory, but just for the sake of throwing ideas out there, here's my own possible explanation for mutants.
Let's do this.
Maybe in the past there were a lot more mutants in the world, but then, early in the 20th century, mutants were discovered by evil supremacists like the Nazis or Hydra or some other group of terrible people. And many of the mutants were kidnapped and taken to Genosha, where they faced segregation as slaves. Genosha is Marvel's allegory for South African apartheid. The mutants on the island were slaves and were treated in horrendous ways by the human ruling class.
The leader has promised that you mutants will be released once this dam is built. But if you try to escape, you will never leave Genosha.
So, here's our idea. Most of mutant kind was kept on Genosha. At some point, the mutants rebelled and tried to escape. This uprising caused the humans in charge of Genosha to clean house and exterminate all the mutants. The Genosha Holocaust could explain the absence of mutants and why no one knew about them. The whole thing was kept quiet and got swept under history's bloody rug. But not all the mutants died on Genosha. Some survived, others were never taken there, and mutants kept being born even after the genocide. But they have all chosen to live in hiding ever since.
Anonymity is a mutant's first defense against the world's hostility.
Now maybe Magneto is a survivor of Genosha, and that's his updated origins in the MCU. But I don't think Magneto's origins need to be altered. He should remain Jewish and a Holocaust survivor. It's an important part of who he is. That event defines him and explains his actions and philosophy, something we're actually going to explore soon in our upcoming Magneto is Right video.
You built these weapons to destroy us. Why? Because you are afraid of our gifts. Humanity has always feared that which is different.
And yes, it means Magneto will be 100 years old, but come on, this is the MCU. You want to tell me that with all this technology, magic, and everything in between, someone like Magneto wouldn't find a way to keep himself young and healthy?
Bullet wounds don't just magically heal overnight.
They do here.
His life's mission is to fight for mutants. He wouldn't allow himself to die before he achieved it. Anyway, Genosha or some other terrible genocide dwindled the mutants' population from thousands to a few hundred just around the world. But then there was an event that changed that. Maybe it's the snap or the blip. So basically, humans carry this X gene in their DNA, and the cosmic energy of the stones activates the X gene, causing a rapid evolution and mutation. Also, it sort of fits thematically, as the snap represents the end of the Infinity Saga, but it's also the catalyst that creates new stories for the new saga. The MCU's Earth is filled with all kinds of super people, so I guess mutants can easily hide in plain sight, especially with the big three.
What big three? Androids, aliens, and wizards.
But mutants are much more than that, which leads me to how they should be incorporated. Mutants are not just a few individuals with powers, they are a race of people. And that's just a powder keg waiting to happen. Once humans learn about the mutants, it's inevitable that this knowledge will create discrimination and bigotry.
The truth is that mutants are very real, and they are among us. We must know who they are, and above all, we must know what they can do.
These things will always happen. It's part of what makes the X-Men story so fascinating and relevant, even in the fantastical world of the MCU. But none of this works without great characters, and X-Men have them in droves. That's one of the biggest problems with Fox's X-Men movies. They never had the time to go deep into many of the best X-Men characters. Wolverine and a few others got the spotlight, while amazing characters like Cyclops never got the respect they deserved.
It's me.
Prove it.
You're a dick.
Okay.
Alright, we need to stop this video for a moment because I'm personally offended by the mistreatment of Cyclops in all the X-Men movies. This won't stand. Scott Summers is not some uptight, boring, jealous boyfriend who just shoots lasers from his eyes.
This is unacceptable.
If the MCU must do one thing with the X-Men, it is bring justice to Cyclops. Scott Summers is one of the best X-Men characters, serving as the balance between the ideals of Professor X and Magneto. He's a natural-born leader and respected by all of his teammates, even by Wolverine. Cyclops is one of the best X-Men ever. He is the heart of the team. He isn't a Boy Scout, he does what's right. Actually, he's a lot like the MCU's Steve Rogers, though he's much harsher, and that makes him so interesting. Cyclops represents the biggest conflict of the X-Men and mutants as a whole. He is the leader of the X-Men, so every choice he makes affects the rest of the team. He's such a complicated and fascinating character, and his powers embody that, because the energy that is released from his eyes is almost limitless, so he must always be in control of his powers and himself. And that's not lasers, his eyes are portals shooting energy from other dimensions. Cyclops can easily become as essential to the X-Men stories as Captain America was to the Avengers.
How do we do this?
As a team.
If we do this, we do it as a team.
And this is not just me fanboying about Cyclops. Go down the list of the X-Men, and most of them are some of the most unique, fascinating, and colorful individuals in comics. So it's just a goldmine of storytelling. And this is why the MCU should not make an X-Men movie.
What the shit?
We need a Disney Plus show for the X-Men. Marvel is killing it with their shows. They are all as cinematic as any movie, and thanks to multiple hours, the shows are able to explore the characters with a kind of depth and care that's impossible in films. And then there's The Mandalorian, a show that single-handedly brought Star Wars back from the dead.
It's alive!
And the X-Men stories are perfectly suited to the long-form, character-driven narrative. You have countless characters with wonderful stories that can easily fill about 7 or 8 seasons. This way, all the great characters will get their time to shine, and all the complex issues could be explored in depth. And we've had some really amazing X-Men movies, but there's been even more stinkers. So it's time for a drastic change in how the X-Men stories are told, and shifting the X-Men to television is simply the perfect choice. Now, that's not to say we're not going to see the X-Men in movies. WandaVision and Loki both lead directly into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier established the story for Captain America 4. And it's not just the shows that tie into the movies, it would also be the reverse. With this kind of interconnectivity, the X-Men could easily appear in other movies and shows. Obviously, the X-Men will show up in big crossover events. I can see Wolverine showing up in a future Avengers movie. Also, at some point, we have to get an Avengers vs. X-Men movie. An awesome direction for it will be Dark Phoenix. Maybe Season 4 will adapt the Dark Phoenix saga, but then the climax of the story will involve the Avengers as the two teams clash, one trying to stop Jean while the other attempts to save her.
I'm trying something different. Maybe you should do the same.
I'm gonna cut your goddamn head off.
And whenever we have our next Endgame event, which is shaping up to be Secret Wars, all the X-Men will join in with all the other heroes for an epic team-up. Wolverine can be one of the characters that jump in between the show and other movies, like appearing in Captain America 4. And we can have a whole flashback to World War II and learn about Wolverine's origins, so we could see Logan saving Steve Rogers' life during a battle, and even forming a friendship with Bucky. And then, years later, when Logan becomes Weapon X, he actually fights the Winter Soldier, showing how these two friends were both brainwashed and used as weapons by evil humans. Maybe Logan recognized Bucky's scent, and thanks to their friendship, he breaks free from the Weapon X program. So that's a natural way to introduce Wolverine into the MCU. Insert the endless debate over which alloy is stronger, vibranium or adamantium.
Vibranium.
The strongest metal on Earth.
The metal is an alloy called adamantium.
It's indestructible.
The answer is adamantium.
Oh, I don't care if it's mean.
I would also love to see a team-up between Wolverine and Spider-Man, because those two must cross paths at some point. Considering that Sony feels like they just have to give Spidey a mentor, maybe Logan might be Peter's new father figure in Spider-Man 4.
Well, I'm Spider-Man, and this is my trusty sidekick, Wolverine.
Don't push it, webhead.
Storm could appear in a future Black Panther movie, revealing that, like in the comics, she and T'Challa were lovers at one time. Depending on what Marvel does with T'Challa's character in the future, that could lead to Storm visiting Wakanda, either to mourn her former lover or pay respect to a king. Now, all signs point to Namor being in Black Panther 2, possibly as the villain. This means Wakanda goes to war with Atlantis, and maybe Namor unleashes a giant tsunami on the nation at some point. And Storm will be there using her powers to save Wakanda. Namor is also a mutant himself, and he's been part of the X-Men at a certain point in time. And Professor X could team up with Doctor Strange and other heroes to form the Illuminati. And who knows, maybe Magneto will be revealed as Wanda's father.
I am your father.
What?
Though I don't think that's going to happen. She's just been revealed to be the Scarlet Witch, so saying that she's also a mutant is a bit too much. There's also the whole space side of the X-Men that was never explored in the movie, so maybe that can lead to a team-up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So basically what I'm saying is, just put the X-Men in everything. And then there's Deadpool, who definitely needs his own movie, either Deadpool 3 or X-Force. Actually, kinda would be hilarious if Deadpool gets a super meta reboot, where he constantly breaks the fourth wall about it, making fun of Disney, reboots, the MCU, and all of that. The first season of the X-Men show should focus on their early days. By the time we meet them, the team should have already been established as they find and help other mutants. Also, we don't need the first class lineup. Giant Size X-Men is the more iconic and includes the best X-Men characters. This is also the team that we got in the wonderful 90s show, and honestly, that show should be the blueprint for Marvel. For the first few seasons, the story should focus on the X-Men dealing with their role in society as they face discrimination and suspicion from humanity. The story should start right around the time the world learns about mutants and explore how it all spirals into a conflict between mutants and humans. And as the mutant-human conflict escalates, the X-Men will have to step up and protect their fellow mutants, while clashing with Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants.
We need to present ourselves as a team like any other. Avengers, Fantastic Four, they don't get chased through the streets with torches. Here come the tights. Sorry, Logan, superheroes wear costumes.
Over time, their interactions with the Avengers will help them become superheroes, and they become a team that protects the whole planet along with the other heroes. So yeah, Marvel can do so much with the X-Men over the next 10 to 15 years. And I think as we get excited about the potential of the X-Men, it's easy to ignore the question of how the mutants should be explained and where they were before their introduction. But what do you think? Should Marvel go into all the details about where the mutants have been all these years? Do you agree or disagree that the X-Men should be a show? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.